right, when we consider what should history say, we have to think a lot about what the intent is behind studying history. Why should we be studying history? Well, we can think about this in terms of even our founding fathers and some of the mythology that surrounds them and the heroes that we have created out of them. So, should we talk about Thomas Jefferson as being an apostle of agrarian democracy? Should we think of him as a champion of the rights of the common people? Is he a Southern aristocrat? Is he a liberal capitalist? Is he a suppressor of civil liberties? Is he a racist? Is he an enlightened skeptic? Or is he all of these? It entirely depends on how you're viewing him, why you're viewing him, what documents you're reading, what his intent was when he was writing, who he was writing to. So we have to look at history through multiple lenses. And part of how we do that is by studying historiography. Historiography is the study of historical writing, and historical writing itself changes through time. Even writers who are historians give us clues about the time that they are living in themselves when they choose to write about history and historical events. They are viewing historical events through their own lenses of their own time and their own economics, politics, and culture. And that's going to very much impact how they perceive those events. And we'll look at this primarily when we talk about Christopher Columbus and how our views of Christopher Columbus have changed over time. We now kind of demonize him as a conquistador and someone who has been was violently treating Native Americans, but at the time he was just doing what conquistadors do. And early in our history, we celebrated him for setting us on a path to American nationalism and some believe American greatness. So what caused that shift? And how does that shift actually reflect the times that we're living in it now compared to historically? So historians gather evidence and they analyze it and sort it, and then they write about it and they look at historical counts, and then they turn around and they analyze, share that analysis with the public. And that all comes part of this sort of cycle of what we call history. And historiography is looking at that cycle itself, even zooming out further from the history and looking at the historians in a greater global historical context. You're studying history in the year 2020. You're studying history in the context of a global pandemic, in a high school that's half shut down. So all of that is going to impact how you view historical events. And we see this play out particularly in textbooks. And you're going to be asked to read textbooks in this class, but I want you to ask questions about those textbooks. Why do we study history? What should we say? Who should decide what goes into textbooks? Textbooks are very much shaded by the politics of the time they're created in. This is an example in a textbook that was published in Texas. You can see that it says the Atlantic slave trade between the 15 and 1800s brought millions of workers from Africa to the southern United States to work on agricultural plantations. This actually became very controversial a couple of years ago because the term workers implies that they were kind of here voluntarily. But we know that slavery was involuntary and that these people, these human beings, were treated like chattel or property. And in fact, for years and centuries in our country's history, they were not given rights or even considered fully human because of that. So it's interesting that just a few words tweaked in a book could really sort of twist that idea so much. You see this in textbooks all over the country. For example, here's a tale of two textbooks. This is a California textbook, and it is an annotated passage of the Bill of Rights. And what's interesting about this is, according to the annotations, the Second Amendment is annotated that explains that rulings on the Second Amendment have allowed for some regulations of the Second Amendment. So that's the California textbook. If you look at the same textbook, same publisher, same graphics, same everything, but this book was being delivered to Texas schools. In the same place, this edition had a blank spot. There was no additional annotation regarding the Second Amendment and any restrictions that the Supreme Court might have made on those. So why are those decisions being made? Well, politically, Texas and California are very, very different. And so decisions are being made by editors and historians on what to put in these books, and they're impacted by the politics of the time and place that the books are written. So what should history say? It all depends on the purpose of the author and what the intent is behind the writing. So my proposal is that you just simply question, what is the author writing about? Why are they writing? What's happening in their world at the time they are writing that might be shading how they're influencing or perceiving events in their own time? And that means people living through events historically, but also the interpretations of historians of those events historically. All right, that's APUSH in a nutshell.